I'm told you want to know about Joseph. Of course you do. Anyone who's heard the story knows the name. He's there in every Christmas crib and nativity play, while pictures of him and his family drop daily through your letterbox each December. Portrayed, more often than not, as an old, white-haired man leaning on a staff. He is the perfect cipher for trust and reliability, a symbolic illustration of faithfulness and stoicism. But whilst he's to be found somewhere in thousands of artworks by centuries of painters, he is, as often as not, relegated to the background, shown half in shadow, depicted looking awestruck or simply puzzled and patient, or sometimes with an expression that's impossible to read, not so much inscrutable as just undefined, as though the artist's interests and attentions lay elsewhere, occupied with the far greater burden of depicting the mother and child. For most people, Joseph is simply a character who lives in the margin of the Christmas story. He might be shown returning to the stable with a bundle of new-cut firewood, or perhaps holding up a lantern to illuminate the stable. He does feature in a couple of ancient carols, but he has never had the prominence of kings, shepherds, and, I might add, angels. That's Joseph, the supporting player in a monumental drama that has been so often told that the enormity of its possibilities has been reduced to the familiar, even to the commonplace. Oh, I shall probably start by telling you what he looks like, but then I'm no judge of men's outer appearances. I'll explain why anon. But whether Joseph is plain-featured or once handsome and now rugged is quite unimportant to this story. What matters is his character, the man within, and about that I can tell you quite enough to provide an adequate introduction. Why me? Well, we'll come to that soon enough. Suffice it to say that Joseph is proud of his heritage, descended across millennia from, as he will readily quote, the house and lineage of David. That, of course, is King David. He is proud, too, of his skill as a carpenter. Actually, carpenter is far too demeaning a term for such a craftsman with wood whose calloused hands are adept with handsaw, chisel and plane, well used to the placing of a nail, the wielding of a hammer. Whilst furniture purchased from Joseph's workshop is plain, homely and functional, it has a simple grace, giving its presence in the home a certain artless beauty that sets it apart from the everyday. But Joseph has his worries. He's no longer as young as he was, let's say, for argument's sake, early to mid-30s, and with no children, there's no one to carry on his name into future generations. As things stand, the reputation of Joseph the carpenter will die with him. Or maybe long before that, if and when his eyesight and energies inevitably begin to wane and fail. Nazareth, 12 miles southwest of the Sea of Galilee, is a village of little or no importance, if oral tradition is to be trusted. It has long been a common insult to ask whether anything good could ever come out of Nazareth. Apart from which, Nazareth is where Joseph meets Mary. It may be that the betrothal is a matter arranged between families, but possibly the encounter comes about through someone knowing someone else who's a cousin of a neighbour's friend, and although she is a good few years his junior, Joseph's pulse misses a beat at her shy smile, and his heart leaps and takes hope. I'd like to think that's how it happens, because, by nature, I'm something of a romantic. However it comes about, they are duly betrothed. Plans are in hand for the wedding and their life together, when there falls upon this pleasant couple a mallet blow as heavy as any Joseph ever plied at his work. In the way that only a woman knows, even one who is young and innocent of much about the ways of the world, Mary knows she is going to have a child. And that is where I come in. Some have named me Gabriel, but the names men give us matter little. God knows who we are, and that is enough. However, since Gabriel is a familiar name, I am happy to go by it for the telling of this tale. You will understand now, perhaps, why I set little store by the outward appearances of humankind. Our way of looking is not yours. You look first at the outer, and only then at what is within. Angels have to look from the inside out. That's how God arranged it. But to return to Joseph and his fiancée, they are overwhelmed by the unimaginable and divided by the inexplicable. Time, then, to send in the angels. After all, we have a well-chronicled history as experts in the delicate job of making known the ways of God to man. I need not repeat the story of my visitation to Mary. It has been immortalized by the greatest artists in the world, and despite my first-hand knowledge of the meeting, I won't quibble with any of their various interpretations. All that need concern us are the simple facts. A young girl, desperately fearful at first, but then swiftly accepting, with a wisdom beyond her years, that what is to be will be, that she is to bear a baby boy whose name has already been decreed as Jesus, and who is to be called the Son of the Most High. No one should think that Mary's response, "Be it unto me according to thy word," is easily said, or, come to that, fully understood. But faith miraculously transports the impossible into the sphere of the feasible, and makes viable the seemingly absurd. As for her betrothed, Joseph is a good man. If you were looking for a word to describe Joseph, you might settle on decent, honourable, or virtuous. But to my mind, good is good enough. And being a good man, he has no wish to see Mary's young life destroyed by disgrace. The solution for Joseph is obvious, however painful: an end to their betrothal by a discreet separation. But that is not part of the plan. So, to use an archaic word, another annunciation is called for. However, to tell a man that the young woman he was intending to marry is about to conceive a child that is from God and is God is not easy for either of us. Joseph's way of looking at the world is simple. Don't misunderstand me. He is not simple, far from it, but he is uncomplicated, whereas my news is phenomenally complicated. His faith is humble, his expectations of God are modest, and, like most people, he has zero previous experience of encountering angels. It is recorded that I appeared to Joseph in a dream, and that will do. Meetings with angels are not that common, and if rationalizing the experience as a dream makes it seem less outlandish to the one visited, where's the harm in that? I have to say, for a man in a dream, he asks a great many questions that cannot be glibly answered, demanding explanations that require a degree more patience to understand than a man in his predicament is ready to give. Like many passionate personal discussions, it begins with the focus fixed on the pain of injustice, the wound of having been wronged, before moving on to the hurt of humiliation. But eventually he finds a way to accommodate the possibility, and then accept the truth, of what I tell him: that Mary's child is the work of the Holy Spirit. Naturally, he still wonders what exactly that means. Angels may understand, and theologians hypothesize about such things, but for most people, it's a real challenge. Anyway, by the time Joseph awakes from what he will later refer to as his dream, he has reached the conclusion that, although it's all still outside his full comprehension, he has somehow been caught up in a kind of divine intrusion into the history of the world that will reach farther than the farthest fields of Nazareth. The outcome? Joseph will, as planned, take Mary as his wife and assume the responsibility of caring for a child he had not fathered. In making this decision, however, he doesn't fully reckon with the local ramifications. When the news breaks, it is beyond shocking. In a parochial little town like Nazareth, it is the all-consuming subject of gossip and speculation. Joseph's betrothed, young Mary, unblemished child of honourable and devout parents is, to use the discreet euphemism of the biblical translators, with child, out of wedlock and out of kilter with every right and decent rule of social propriety. The depth and degree of the shame visited on these two families is profound. But Joseph and Mary, boldly putting their faith in God and each other, get married and weather the storm. For a short while, the business of Nazareth's premier carpenter suffers a minor setback. But human pragmatism rises above most troubles, and eventually the outrage dwindles to a 9 days' wonder. Then comes a day when Mary receives unexpected family news and goes off alone to the hill country of Judah to visit her cousin Elizabeth. Despite Elizabeth being well past the age for bearing children, she is also expecting a baby, a boy who will grow up to play a significant role in this story. Meanwhile, Joseph concentrates on his daily tasks, cutting and sewing, making sturdy joints, vigorously smoothing surfaces and chiselling simple, honest decoration. Mary is gone for several months, and to better focus his mind on the coming event, Joseph works into his long, lonely evenings, making a cradle for his future foster son. It is finished and ready for Mary's inspection on her return. She gently caresses the wood and smiles her pride, while Joseph glows his gratitude. Although a fine token of mutual love and trust, that cradle, with a bittersweet irony, is destined never to be used because powers mightier than a humble carpenter are at work. So it's time now to cue the appearance of Gaius Octavius Thurinus, better known as Augustus Caesar. You'll have heard the words before. And it came to pass in those days that there went out a decree from Caesar Augustus that all the world should be taxed. That's how you've always heard the story, and I'm not going to waste time engaging with historians who carp about the veracity of this statement. After all, one man's history is another man's legend. Several months later, Joseph is sweeping wood shavings and sawdust out of his workshop door. Since this is a mechanical task, requiring little concentration, his thoughts are far away, well over 90 miles, or so he reckons, in Bethlehem. It's the city of his ancestor, King David, but he has never been there, and doesn't particularly want to go there now. But, like it or not, Bethlehem is where he has to go, as required by Caesar Augustus, to be registered in a census. These Romans with all their confounded rules, regulations, and taxes. Without realizing, Joseph has stopped brushing. He can feel anxiety welling up and taking hold. It will be a bad enough journey at the best of times, but with Mary now in the last month of her first pregnancy, how can he possibly travel 90 miles with a wife who might go into labour at any point along the way? A worrying question, but of course, being angels, we have plans in place.